Hey, I'm Alex Lam. Disneyland is the best. The absolute best. I mean, they got the themed foods, fast pass so you don't have to wait in line, they got amazing shows, and then they got all the little details in the park that make it seem so magical. I mean, their quote is the happiest place on earth, and I don't think anyone has ever disputed it. But it wasn't always this perfect. In fact, one of the worst days, if not the worst day in Disneyland history, was the opening day of the very first Disneyland on 17th of July 1955. It was a super disaster. And looking back, we can narrow it down to 9 things that could have made Disneyland not exist. So let's get to it. Number 1, the park was unfinished. Walt Disney wanted a quick turnaround. He wanted Disneyland, which was 160 acres, to be open in 1 year's and 1 day's time, which is ridiculous. I mean, think about all the landscaping, all the electrical stuff, the plumbing, and the made-to-order buildings, sets, and sculptures. It was incredibly ambitious, and to put into perspective how big 160 acres is, it's a little over 121 football fields. The construction teams worked day and night, racing to meet the deadline. And once the park was open, guests could clearly see that the park wasn't finished. On opening day, workers were still planting trees and painting structures, and a few rides were still under construction, such as Tomorrowland's Rocket to the Moon. Number 2, counterfeited tickets. The first day of Disneyland wasn't actually open to the general public, but instead was an invite-only event. Still, 15,000 people were expected to come, and on the day, over 28,000 people came, as some, well, a lot of guests invited themselves. On the day, there were 2 ticket types, the morning ticket and the afternoon ticket. The morning ticket guests were expected to leave in the afternoon, but not everybody left in the morning group, making things even more crowded. And on top of the fake tickets, there was a gentleman outside with a ladder offering to smuggle people over the wall for $5 per person. So the 28,000 number was just the people walking through the gates. We will never know the real number of the additional people that were smuggled in. Number 3, traffic was maddening. The city of Anaheim was not prepared for the amount of people that showed up. It was bumper to bumper for over 7 miles on California's Santa Ana freeway. Passengers and kids would be taking bathroom breaks on the side of the freeway, and those who could not hold it in till Disneyland just relieved themselves in the parking lot when they saw the amount of people. Number 4, food and drink shortages. With almost double the amount of people that were estimated to visit, the food and drinks from both restaurants and concession stands sold out within a few hours. And this brings us to number 5, Plumbers Strike. Now, plenty of water fountains were installed, but due to the Plumbers Strike, majority of them weren't working. Walt Disney was faced with a tough decision for Disneyland's opening day. He had to choose between working water fountains or working restrooms. He picked the latter because he felt like toilets were more important. Here's a quote from Dick Nunes, chairman of Walt Disney Attractions, who explained to Wired. Quote start. A few weeks before the opening, there was a major meeting. There was a plumbing strike. I'll never forget this. I happened to be in the meeting. So the contractor was telling Walt, there aren't enough hours in the day to finish the restrooms and to finish all the drinking fountains. And this is the classic Walt, he said. Well, you know, they could drink Coke and Pepsi, but they can't pee in the streets. Finish the restrooms. Quote end. Number 6, the heat. The weather was just something Disney had no control over. Temperatures hit 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 37 degrees, which is bloody hot. It was so hot that fresh asphalt became like sticky tar. Guests were complaining that they were getting their shoes and high heels stuck in the pavement of Main Street. I mean, imagine being one of the guests. It's scorching hot, there's nothing to eat or drink, you'd absolutely be pissed. Number 7, rides were breaking down. Like so many of the other workers striving to make Walt Disney 1 year deadline, both Disney's Imagineers and construction workers rushed to complete the theme park. As a result, a number of rides, including Peter Pan's Flight, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the Submarine Voyage, and Dumbo the Flying Elephant in Fantasyland, broke down or were closed altogether because they simply weren't finished. The iconic Mark Twain riverboat in Frontierland was filled way over capacity on opening day, with about 500 people cramming into the attraction. This caused the boat to go off its track and sink in the mud. But the ordeal was far from over. Terry O'Brien, who was working the ride on opening day, later recalled in an interview, I quote, "It took about 20 to 30 minutes to get it fixed and back on the rail, and it came chugging in. As soon as it pulled up to the landing, all the people rushed to the side to get off, and the boat tipped into the water again. So they all had to ward off the water, and some of them were pretty mad." End quote. Number 8, the gas leak. The leak actually caused flames near Sleeping Beauty's castle and could have potentially burned down the building. The gas resulted in the park promptly closing Adventureland, Fantasyland, and Frontierland for a few hours. Now, interesting fact, the day was so chaotic, Walt Disney didn't even find out about the gas leak until the following day. Number 9, ABC's live show was a mess. The plan was for Walt Disney to host a 90-minute live TV special with co-hosts Art Linkletter, Bob Cummings, and future President Ronald Reagan during the opening day to show all the fun and excitement of Disneyland. They did show a lot of fun and excitement and even did a really good job at hiding the disasters that we previously described. However, the live broadcast was filled with technical difficulties and unexpected moments. Guests were tripping over the camera cables and even Walt Disney himself near the end of the live broadcast. Faulty miscues and hot mics recording. And I think the biggest moment caught on camera was Bob Cummings making out with a dancer just before going on air. And what's very interesting is earlier during the broadcast, he introduced his wife. Now, I'll put the link to the broadcast in the description box below, along with the timestamp of Bob Cummings hooking up with a dancer and Walt Disney tripping over the wire. Now, I highly recommend you guys just check that out because it's really unbelievable. After the day ended, the press and people ripped into Walt Disney and Disneyland, but he wasn't swayed. He held on and pushed forward. Within a few weeks, he fixed most of the rides, and by week 7 opening, 1 million people had walked through Disneyland's gates. And the rest is history. Over 60 years later, they have 6 Disneylands around the world. The attendance for 2018 was over 18 million, and it's still growing. Now, I find it kind of funny that the first day was the worst day. I mean, imagine if Walt actually listened to the critiques and just shut everything down. I mean, there'd be no Disneyland. So that's the story of Disneyland's disastrous opening day. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe if you want to hear more stories. Also, be sure to check out my previous videos. I'm Alex Slam, and this is Stories of the World. Peace. Under the sea, under